What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER. With me, as always, my good friend Tommy STILES. You guys are joining us on YouTube, so please go ahead and subscribe to the Muscle Media Network channel. Like the video, send it to a friend, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And as always, ring the bell. That way you're notified every time we put up a new episode. This episode and all of the episodes are brought to you by Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel. Train hard, die strong. Thank you to the owner, Chris Cirillo, for supporting the show, supporting the channel. I got my one of my favorites, got the green camo hoodie. So check them out, KodiakBodybuildingApparel.com. And today, Tommy, we are diving into everything post-show rebound.
Post-show rebound.
So we've been doing a couple Q&As. And a lot of the questions, it's contest season. A lot of people are wondering about how to move forward after. So I'll just start rifling them off and we'll let it kind of carry us where it may. All right. So what's your thought process, experience level, all these things? Because this is a good kind of general topic for this time period. Are you tapering off fat burners? Do you pull them out cold turkey? What do you think is best?
Fat burners like Glen, Yohimbine,
T3, let's say.
Yeah, I'll pull all that out. T3 I might keep in just for like 1 to 2 weeks to help. I'm assuming most people are going to have 1 to 2 days where they go pretty hard with food. Some are going to go longer. It's just how it is. But T3 I might keep in at like a half dose every other day, just as a way to kind of bridge us into that off-season plan. But outside of that, now I get the fat burners out. I get all the cutters out. We'll get more into PEDs, but my goal is to try to remove anything toxic for the most part right away.
Yeah, I've done it all. I've seen it all, tried it all on myself first and foremost. I will tell you for me and my body type, and also definitely the way that I ate in my less mature days, earlier in the journey, I could go pretty hard on food after a show. So the times that I went cold off both the Clan and the T3 were not my prettiest situations. I think even being on the money with like a reverse diet or a rebound diet, whatever you want to call it, I think there's a good percentage of people that it would serve them probably more benefit than harm to leave some of both T3 and Clen in if you were using it. If you were using the T3, I think just immediately halving it would probably be a good starting point. So if you were on 25, just immediately going to 12.5, I think would be good. Then there's still thyroid support, but you're not pulling the rug out from underneath it. Clan, I like to leave a little bit in for the first week, just so there's not such a shock reaction. Again, I almost never use diuretics as a coach, so there's not that potential for almost like this unnatural water rebound that you see guys have, where even if you nail your plan, if you did diuretics, you're going to be like 20 pounds up a week later. So I don't really see that, but you still, if you're putting GH back in, you're putting long ester anabolics back in, food's going to go up, output's probably going to come down. I like if someone gets to, say 100 micrograms of Clen the final week or two of the prep, I will probably have them start back up on like 40 the Sunday after the show, and probably run that for a week, I would say, just so there's a little bit of a buffer.
Yeah, I see the validity in that.
Yeah. It depends too. Like you're a pretty dry person and you can handle insane amounts of food. I would probably just yank you off both, but I know your response well, and this is someone I know can trust to be on the money with their diet. Like for some of these newer people, younger people, first time competing, stuff like that, if leaving some of that stuff in at lowered doses can leave a little margin for error that that is kind of inevitable with these type of people, which we've all been there. Like I said, the first handful of shows that I did, I ate my face off after. I couldn't get enough food. So having a little bit of both of those things in probably would have been a benefit more so than a harm to me at that point.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the individual, and because when I map out someone's calories for the reverse plan that first week, I don't go insane with like a big jump. Like it's definitely more food than they were eating, and there's more variety. And I think there's enjoyment in that for people for sure. But I'm not bludgeoning people with calories for that first week, because I expect that they went hard the night after, or the night of the show, the day after the show, and then depending on the person, they might have kept going into Monday and started Tuesday, or worse beyond. So I'm expecting that the calorie total is going to be plenty high with everything they did. So I don't really smash people straight away, just because they did that on their own. So, the goal is to increase food. But like I always tell people, man, like post-show hunger is harder than prep hunger, because you don't have a date to shoot for anymore. It's way harder. And then in your head, you're like, oh, I'm hungry, I should push more food because I need to grow, right? So you're justifying this thing that's like, I need to push more food. And then if you've got people and friends that were like, you said no for the last 6 months, why don't you come out with us, or whatever the case is, you might feel more pressure to say yes. And then the next thing you know, you're doing a free meal a day, you're doing snacks. It can get ugly real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some general advice with that would be to just remember that food is always going to be there. And this is one thing too. Like it took me years and many failed post-show rebounds to figure this out. But the fantasy of the food that you didn't have the whole time is always greater than what the actual experience ends up being. Like my most memorable like post-show meals, it's more about like who I was with and reflecting on what the prep journey was, more so than how the pancakes were. Like I've had pancakes 500 times, I'm gonna have them another 500 times. Like it's not that big of a deal. Here's a good one. So would you keep GH high post show to maximize the rebound, or do you reduce it or avoid it entirely to avoid a crazy water rebound? So like let's say you had somebody that was pushing growth, they're like an all-time, all year bodybuilder. They're on growth in the off season, they're on growth the whole prep. Maybe you took it out a week before the show. What are you doing? Are you starting it back up Monday?
So with GH post show, it's going to be individual. Like it's individual dependent on the water thing. If it's someone who's been peeled and was peeled and they went into the show peeled, I'm not worried about a water rebound, provided they're responsible with their food. So I'm going to put the GH. I mean, high is subjective, but it's going to be probably an IU or two higher than where I had them in prep. And then
like so you're saying like maybe right back to off season total, like peak growing total?
Yeah, like if I had somebody at 5, I might take them to 6 or 7 post show.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And the thing about that's tricky with water rebound is it's like, as coaches, we know water's coming. Like it's not a negative in some aspect. You want water back for training purposes and just getting your body weight back up. But I think as certain clients who don't have as much experience, they look at any sort of water rebound as like a negative.
Right. Right, because then they don't look as shredded, and everyone struggles with this. I'm going to say 99% of
Yeah.
people that gets like super peeled the first 1 to 10 days, it's kind of a mind fuck where you just are slowly deconditioning the look. Scale is going up, could be dramatic for a couple days in a row, like where it's been for months. Every day you saw your weight go down a little bit and your body get a little bit leaner. That was the
Yep.
only thing on your mind for months and months and months. And then it starts going in the other direction. And there's almost like, I think for some people, like a level of guilt. It feels like they're doing something wrong. And it's like, man, like we need this to happen for you. Um, like you said, for training, like you have to get away from that dry and shaky lack of stability that you feel at the final stretch of prep, because that's everything. The training is going to drive everything. Like we're talking about adding size and making improvements post show. Of course, part of that's food, part of that's anabolics, but everything is driven by the training. So it's like, if someone, if the judges told you at the show, like you really need to bring your quads up, there's nothing that you're going to do to your diet or your drug specifically that's going to bring your quads up. There's a lot you could do to your training. So, you need to be in a productive spot. And we can kind of go straight into other PEDs too. Like that's why I think something like, of course, test, as your base and however much you're going to use. But I've opened my eyes to the idea of using like NPP as a secondary um, in that post show period, because it's like, oh, it's watery, it's wet, and it's like, yeah, that's why I'm choosing it. Like there is something to the fluid going into your joints right after, and it should set you up to have some really crazy training.
Yeah, no, I mean that my rebound was test DECA GH and then a little bit of Hubalog, which I think was a question I had from someone about using insulin with the post-show rebound. So we can touch on that in a second, but I loved it, dude. That's right where I want to be, man. Nandrolone is joint protective. I feel confident with my knees, especially for me, like when I have an MPP or a DECA in place. So I had no problem, like, and I've done this. I know what my end all be. I know I need more size. So it's not hard for me to let go of the post-show look or the
Right.
show look, prep look, because I've proven to myself I can get back there anytime I want to, relatively quickly too. Like it's not, if I had to diet tomorrow, I could be in shape in 8 weeks. It would be a hard 8 weeks, but I could do it. So once you get enough shows under your belt, and if you're really trying to climb to the above or the national level, and you actually want to go pro, you're gonna start to care less and less and less about that. Whereas like I just had a couple first timers compete who are like 1 week post show and they're struggling, and I'm like, I 100% expected you to struggle. This is expected. You just worked your tail off for 26 weeks, and probably the best you've ever looked was on that day of that show, and now you're slowly watching it disappear. And unfortunately, that's the process. We can't live there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, your job, I've said this before. I have gotten this from someone. I don't know who I heard say this, but like your job, the second the show is over, is to be bigger, to be as big as you can be. So if of course, that could be abused where then you start rationalizing eating way off plan and whatever else. So that's not the message. But if you can flip the mental perspective, like to all of this is going to go towards me being bigger and better next time, that should definitely help. And it should just be, I mean, I think the people that really stick with bodybuilding are the ones that love to train. So yes, it's a mind fuck and it sucks to lose the look, but then once you realize how insane the gym is for the first 6 weeks after a show, and what you have to weigh and look like to get back to that, it's a pretty killer trade-off. Like getting quickly back to close to what you were doing peak off season, like pretty soon after the show, you're going to reset your set point for how lean and muscular you are. Like I mean, the rebound, there's no doubt about it. Like there's all these people now that want to put a ceiling on what's happening, and it's just body fat and glycogen coming back on. and I've parroted those same things previously. I've had that opinion, because people that I worked under had that opinion. But then we look at who's saying that, and it's like, man, we know a lot of these guys as impressive bodybuilders because of a stretch that they had post show where the foot was on the gas in every aspect. Where it's like, you look at, again, like somebody like John Jewett. He is one of these educators now that's telling people, the post show rebound is just about getting healthy. There's no muscle growth happening. There's no benefit really to trying to push the envelope during the rebound. And it's like, man, to be fair, like John's great, has brought a lot of great knowledge to the industry, but we all know who John Jewett is because he went from a middleweight at USA's, had a stretch immediately post show where he blasted drugs and food, and then came back and won the heavyweight of the USA the following year. So if that was the case, why didn't, after his middleweight appearance, why didn't he just go into a cruise?
Yeah, I've done both, and I definitely believe that the extending your prep with anabolics and all other things is the way to go. If this is a lot, you have to figure out what you're doing individually. For me, I know that, this isn't going to be my last show. I probably have plans for a year away if I'm coming out of a show. So it's very much like Saturday night, shower, eat something, Sunday to myself, Monday back to work. Like it's that simple for me. So if you fall into that camp, then yeah, I do believe that extending, provided you're in a place to, you didn't run out of money, you're not like got thrown out by your girlfriend or whatever. If the situation fits, but if I can do it that way as a coach and myself, like I'm extending I'm extending my prep another 8 weeks, and I'm rebounding well, and then I'll come off and do my stuff. But I just, to me, it makes sense because you're creating that next launch point, and it's going to look a lot better than it ever looked in your life.
I
30
think
to
too,
35 pounds heavier.
it should be, yeah. And there should be like a new set point in terms of like, now all of a sudden you're 35 pounds heavier, but like you kept like faint glute lines or something. And it's like you said, it's almost like a better launching point. Um, and I think too, like people hear that you're going to continue on anabolics or whatever after, and they just lump it all together. And it's like, oh, this is toxic. You're on drugs for this long. And it's like, I understand that, it's true, but also like, look at what drugs we're on. Like if I go from taking out every oral, I'm taking out tren, I'm taking out, you know, AIs, all these different things that we know are harmful. And then I just put you on like testananthate and NPP. Um, that's an up, like your health just received an upgrade from where it was at 4 weeks out and what you were using the final stretch of prep. So in a way, you can almost look at it like you are relative to where you were at the end of the prep. You are getting healthier, but you're also still like prioritizing this really sensitive opportunity to make progress. I think too, if you can, if the prep's not too long, or if you have, as a coach, if you have someone for a full year, like you started with them in the off season, went through that, and then scheduled out their prep, you can schedule, 4, 6, 8 weeks of a rebound on anabolics as part of the whole cycle. Like the prep drugs don't have to start at 24 weeks out. Like you could start prep drugs at 12 to 16 weeks out. And then it's like you bought yourself those 6 to 8 weeks at the end.
Yeah, I would say the majority of my preps this year, I started guys at 16, maybe 18.
Right.
If anything, from like 24 to 18 or 16, I was putting them in a pre-prep and we were cruising,
Yeah.
getting the fat loss process started early with no heavy hitters in play. And then that first leg of prep becomes like a little bit of a mini recomp because they've been off for 8 weeks. We're already in a deficit. Now we might find ourselves in a situation where I can lower cardio and increase food from like 16 to 12.
Yeah. Yeah, there's many different ways to do it. And then in terms of, so you asked about the insulin too. Um, I think again, this is a big one in terms of knowing like the psychology of your client and how hard was the prep. Like, do they need some room for error with the food? Because if so, insulin's not the right call for them.
Agreed.
Like, it's if there's someone that you know is just going to need an extra off-plan meal, you know, here or there, or they're just going to snack in between, like there's just no getting around it. They're going to have a muffin, they're going to have the cookies that their girlfriend made after their last meal. Like, the one of these guys, insulin is the wrong call, because then you're bringing on an overabundance of water and storage, and their eating habits are already creating that, so you don't need it exogenously. um it's the best way that I could put it is like post show rebound, even if someone's really on the money. The pros of using insulin during that time: insane fullness and pumps. The potential cons of that: maybe too much fullness and the pumps are too crazy because you spilled over hard. So it just depends. Again, what is the person's situation? How lean is that person naturally? Were they totally dug out? If they're totally dug out, there's someone like you, Tommy, who has to shove tons of food. You almost have a difficult time storing the food. You're going to be a machine on the rebound diet. You're going to do the cardio that's still in the plan, and you're going to train your ass off. Like, yeah, for someone like you, if I had you right after a show and we had you peeled, man, probably twice a week, you're going to do like some type of crazy high day with insulin, maybe multiple types of insulin, where it's
Yeah.
fucking 1,300 grams of carbs, moderate protein, maybe no fats, and maybe both Humalog and Lantus, something like that.
Yeah. And that was the scenario I was in, with exactly as you just described, mostly.
Hmm.
It
You
was,
keep fats though pretty high. Dom was keeping fats with you in though, because you can. You probably need it to hold it.
yeah, I'll run through it.
Yeah,
So
that's
the fats
crazy.
stay high.
That is crazy.
But while we're on the top, I'm sure there's questions about blood work, but while we're on the topic of PEDs, I think it's so for me, like I'm keeping gear in, um, post show, and I'm still getting bloods within 4 weeks post show. Like I'm not waiting till after that push to check. I'm checking things 4 weeks after prep. I still want to see, I got the orals out, I got the AIs out, I got some water back on me. I don't think you need to get them the very next week because, in my case, I was bone dry. Like everything would have been skewed. You got to remember, blood work's a snapshot in time. So, within 4 weeks is what I tell, 2 to 4 weeks.
2 to 4 weeks is what I like. I'm with you there.
And I
I
got blood
think
work
I
during
think
my
as early
rebound
I think
wall.
as early as 2 weeks, like you were saying.
Yeah. I got my blood work in that timeline while I was rebounding the way I was with the test, the DECA, the G, everything. And it was the best set of blood work I have ever seen for myself.
Yeah.
So when we talk about toxicity and all that, like when I look at that logically, like I can't see a reason not to do what I'm doing. If I saw something different, and Dom too, he would pull me off, no doubt. But it was just like there's nothing wrong. Like everything is in line, almost scary to like if I didn't know my gear was legit, I would have thought I had bunk shit. Best cholesterol I've ever had in my life after one of the longest preps in my life with 3 shows. So, we talk about the health, like I spend a lot of money on health supplements. I check my
Yes.
blood pressure, I check my blood glucose. And when things are wrong, I go back and forth with Dom and we figure it out and we fix it. My blood pressure was recently just creeping. Took some time off training, adjusted my telmisartan dose. Blood pressure came back down. Like you're gonna run into these issues throughout your career if you're trying to push the upper echelon of size. It's gonna happen. Like I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news for some of you. You're not gonna do this your whole life without ever seeing things get out of whack. It's just not possible.
You just mentioned the most important aspect for me post show that I want people monitoring is the blood pressure. And that's like the only time that's not like a major concern for me is when someone's in prep and lean. Because it's, to me, I think the body weight, the lack of consistent movement, and copious amounts of food are what drive blood pressure up on guys.
Look at
Because you
America.
could, I mean, you could be even on more stuff in prep than you are in the off season, but you're
Mhm.
lean, you're doing all your, you have a step minimum, you're doing cardio, all this stuff. It's almost never, I don't want to say never, but almost never an issue for guys. But then it can come on fast. Like if if you're going to push some food and you're going to push some drugs, you're putting GH back in immediately post show, and then all of a sudden you're up 30 pounds. You need to be on top of your blood pressure multiple times a week, maybe even every day if it becomes an issue or it's been an issue in the past. Of course, like I said, I would get blood work done as soon as 2 weeks after, and then just depending on the situation, no later than 4 weeks. Like Tommy said, I like that a lot. But there's really nothing that's gonna like scare me off blood work wise. Like the big ones that I want to see, especially if I'm getting it done 2 weeks post show, is I want to see what the orals, how are they clearing liver enzymes, are they better, are they reasonable, yes, cholesterol, like with the AIs coming out, it should be better. HDLs should be better. And you hope, being still fairly, still pretty damn lean, you would hope your LDL is not fucking through the roof. Um, so I think, to me, honestly, like in terms of what I would be concerned with and wanting someone to stop a cycle, if at 2 weeks out or 2 weeks post show, right, I'm like, yep, here's the rebound plan. We're keeping some injectables in, we're keeping growth in. 2 weeks after the show, I want you to get your blood work. Blood work comes back. If ALT and AST are like more than 5 times above normal still, or 3 to 5 times above normal still, or CRP is through the roof and you haven't been sick or drank alcohol after the show, then I'm like, this might be time to pull this back. And then you have to have an honest conversation with them where, people are going to do, I've told this to people like, hey man, I think we need to pull this back. And people then leave your coaching so that they can continue to use the drugs they want to use. So all you can say is, look, I would pull it down to this. Are you comfortable with this? So I think those are the ones to look for quickly on blood work, but then the blood pressure is just the main one, man. We know, silent killer.
Yeah.
Even if you do things right, like we were talking about, like people almost have a guilt about water coming back on, and it's like, it's just going to happen. Like you have fullness in the muscle again. That might be depending on how big you are, that might be 5 or 10 pounds on a scale.
Yeah.
So your weight, like especially if we're talking about like male enhanced bodybuilders with some appreciable amount of muscle on them, you could do everything right and you might be up 20 pounds in a week. So that doesn't mean you did something wrong, but you really got to monitor the blood pressure at that point, and that could be what shortened your rebound more so than anything else, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's always peace of mind for me. Like I'm not novice with how I bodybuild at all. And I don't consider myself reckless because I take the time to check all this stuff and I keep an eye on it. If I'm getting blood work 4 or 5 times a year, like I'm gonna catch trends. I'm gonna catch things, and I'm not afraid to take time. I mean, I took 3 months to fix my gut on nothing but like true TRT, like
The
nothing more.
shittiest of TRTs. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
just a normal dad TRT.
Yeah.
So I'll take the time, but it's like if I'm not seeing any reason logically to pull back, why would I? Why would I stop what I'm doing? That's where the idea of cycle has kind of been like we're past that money. You can only afford 16 weeks worth of something, which is a very okay. I talk to all my clients and I ask them, what's your budget? Anytime PEDs come up. But if we're talking like most optimal way to do things, or however you want to word it. Like when I knew I needed more size coming out of USA's, I was like starting a NASCAR race that Monday. Got my protocol, got my food, got my training, and I'm going to ease back into training. And like for, to jump over to the training side, I've moved my approach, my views on that over the years. And especially with a lot of my guys coming out of prep right now, and some will be coming out later this year. I'm of the mind of like the way you finish the prep with training, which was probably a different approach than the way you went into it. I think you should keep that going during the rebound. Focus on blood volume. Don't focus on PRs. Don't focus on strength. Strength will come back, but I think what I've learned the most with myself is don't force strength to come back because in your head, you know you need to be bigger. You're a long ways away from the stage. You don't need to get back to peak strength within the first month, because all the things we're talking about, the rebound, I'm also going to mention the rebound is partially about health too. We want to improve sleep. We want to improve all the things that were kind of out of whack at the tail end of prep. And if you go back into the gym and train like a Tasmanian devil, it's going to be good for a while until one day it's not. And I've hit that point multiple times in my life because I didn't have that governor, and I wasn't able to see into the future like I can now.
Yeah, we touched on this. I don't know that it was the last episode, maybe 2 episodes ago, where we were discussing, volume and intensity and their relationship, and when to kind of utilize the different strategies instead of just being married to one all year 24/7. And I'm totally with you. I think it's just there's a lot of stimulus to be had immediately post show. So if you can kind of save your big bullets, so to speak, in terms of, PRs and progressive load on big compound movements, like if you think of those, like you only have so much ammo, and if those are some of like your heavy artillery, like save that, man. Like you that doesn't need to come in right now. Like that should be when your every other variable has been maxed out for months deep into an off season, where you probably can't take any more drugs. You're damn near at the point you can barely eat any more food. And it's like, well, what else do you have? Well, then you got to smash your head against the wall and get one more rep or 5 more pounds with big, heavy movements deep in the off season. But immediately post show, that's not the time. One of the questions that I had actually was like, how quickly should you expect to hit or beat old numbers? And I think you answered it best. I mean, if we're talking about like PR numbers on like big movements, squat, full range of motion leg press, RDL, some type of heavy press, man, I just don't think you should be worried about it. I don't think it should be a huge, I don't think that timeline should be a huge priority in terms of how much you prioritize everything else.
Yeah, no, this year, because I had a different approach coming out of the show. It was more volume and blood, stimulus that way. And it taught me a lot, honestly, because it was like I didn't touch a load that I hadn't, I never got back to my peak on anything. I still made progressions when it was there, but I was really focused on, tempo, training or rest intervals. I was moving a lot faster than I move now in a push-pull legs, like full-blown off-season setup. And it's almost like a different mentality. Like I wasn't even ready to enter that void of where I have to go to touch peak numbers. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have it with my knees. I didn't have it with my shoulders. There's just a stability thing that it takes time to put that back on your body and mind. And for me, I can't get there within 2 months post-show, honestly.
Well, think about how long of an
So
off-season stretch it would have taken you to get to that point. Like you might have been 6 or 8 months deep into an off-season where every day it's a ridiculous amount of food, sleeping 10 hours. Like you're living and solidifying this like off-season body, like this new level of thickness. And then in that state, you come across some new numbers. Man, like you going from stage peeled to 2 months later hitting those same numbers probably not smart for longevity purposes.
Yeah, and truthfully, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. I think that's something people that can train hard need to appreciate. And I'm just not willing to like look cool on Instagram doing something for the potential of like, well, there goes a pec or there goes my knee again, like something.
A hamstring or something. Fuck.
Yeah. So it's just take your time, like climb the ladder. Progression's
Yeah.
progression.
Yeah. Let me see here. I kind of like this question. It's like just totally theory based, but it's more so just conversational than informational. But this guy asked, what proportion of a year's off-season progress do you think can occur during a rebound? So, like, let's say, let's say, for example, someone's going to do USAs this coming year. They get the feedback that they need to just be bigger, right? Systemically, just be bigger. And so they're going to take a year and they're going to be back at next year's USAs. They're going to hit a heavy rebound, cruise, off season, and then prep. What percentage of the progress that they make is happening during this rebound? Totally theory, but what do you think?
Well, let's say you need 4 to 5 there. You got 3 there, so 7. 2 months there, there's 9. So I could see if you came out of the gate strong and for 3 months post show, you did not miss any variable, 25% of your progress could come in that time.
I was going to even say more.
Yeah, I'm just basing it off like a 12-month window
Yeah.
to the next USAs.
No, I see that. No, I totally see that. That makes sense. But
maybe
for some
more.
reason, it almost seems to me like you could probably put on half of what you need in the first 8 weeks. Because it's hard to quantify, but I think what it does for you when you do have a really successful rebound, it's not even just the scale number, it's also how it looks.
Right.
Like you start looking way different at weights you've been at before, like way different. Where, I mean, I did a 4-week rebound and then immediately went back into prep, and I shared pictures today where I'm at the same weight. It's like 3 months apart, and it honestly looks like it could have been 6 or 8 months of progress or a year of progress. And it's like that was 4 months of a pretty mild rebound in terms of the food, actually, because I knew I was just going right back to prep. So, I mean, you think about some of these wild examples where, like Derek goes from winning the 212 to then being second in the Open Olympia, or John Jewett's example, or, there's been a lot of these guys. Justin Compton coaches this guy, Joe.
I was just going to mention him,
Palacios. Like, man, it would be hard to convince me after seeing his rebound and then like the rest of his offseason kind of unfold and everything. It'd be hard to convince me that not half of that like physical progress didn't happen with the first 8 weeks that he, like wasn't set up by those first 8 weeks.
Well, I don't know the total. I just remember seeing a post. I don't want to, this isn't confirmed because I'm going off of memory, but I think he was up like 60 something pounds in 12 weeks post show.
Yeah.
From USAs, because he did USAs. He won the overall.
Yeah.
And then I just saw him put up a post recently with like the same time frame out from USAs as he is from the Cal this Saturday, and he's 19 pounds heavier. So
I was just gonna say, I think he's 20
in 10
pounds
months.
bigger. Yeah.
10 months difference.
Yeah.
So when you break it down like that, guys, like when I talk about that and like when I think like that, and like all I have to do is be perfect for 12 months, it's a no-brainer. Like, sign me up. I'll remove anything in my life that gets in the way. Like, to me, everything we just talked about is worth it. If we're talking about 25 to 50% of my progress can come in the rebound.
Yeah, and it just sets everything else up though long term. Like that, let's say, just to put a number on it, that 50% happens in the first 8 weeks. Man, it may end up being only 25% because it set up such a killer next 6 months for you. Whereas it could definitely slow down for people. Like if you have a killer rebound and then your quote unquote motivation fades, you still might wind up putting on 8 pounds in a year, and probably half of it you can thank to the rebound. So, like you said, it does seem to me like at the heart of the question, it's almost like asking, like, is there greater value in being perfect that immediate 8 to 10 weeks post show? And I would say yes. I would say in terms of growing, there is probably not a more important 8 to 10 week stretch to really nail.
You can't find a reason not to be perfect in that
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah.
If you were
And
peeled,
perfect doesn't mean contest prep, like 2 weeks out, no carb, no cheat meals. Like perfect just means whatever the coach that you hired, he put a plan in place. Like there are guys that I get coming out of a show and they have 3 crazy high days that include a free meal at the end of the day. Perfect could just mean that you did just that. Like you didn't snack and have cheat meals on the other 4 days because you made it work within the plan. That's perfect. That then gives your coach the chance to change the plan as needed and make it work for your rebound.
the worst thing you can do in a rebound is lose your hunger. That's your greatest tool,
Right.
is your hunger. Don't make the mistake of trying to push more food in a short amount of time. You're not going to grow in a week. Think big
Right.
picture with that. If you still have hunger 3.5 months post show, you're in a freaking good spot, dude. You're in a really good spot. But if like week 8's rolling around and you're starting to force feed already, you might have
Right.
overdid it, or your coach pushed it too hard too. So, I don't really, the hunger section on the update form for guys that are rebounding, I honestly don't care unless it says like I'm not hungry, then I'm worried. But I don't care how ravenous you are. Good, stay there, live there.
Drag it out as long as you can. Like gaining weight and hungry. Oh my God. That's a dream off-season check-in.
Yeah, because you have on the horizon of where you're at now, you're going to be where I'm at 1 in the morning, eating a meal you don't want to eat, trying not to throw it up. So think about that when you're like contemplating eating extra food or eating off plan. At some point in this process, you're going to be eating when you don't want to. So just ride the midline.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than being like 6 weeks post show and you're like burpy and without an appetite all day.
You ruined it if that's
You
the
ruined
case.
it. You
Yeah,
might as well. It's probably not it would probably fuck somebody up mentally. But if we're talking just objectively, what needs to happen at that point is you probably need to go back into a diet.
absolutely. 100%. That's the only option at that point. Because
Yeah.
it's not gonna just improve on its own if you're at that point. Those symptoms will get worse. And I mean, I had gut health issues. I know, like, if you get to that point, kiss it goodbye. It's time to diet again.
I will say though, like there have been some situations as I've opened my mind to things and seen like what I was able to do in my off season, and part of it was a couple pretty hard mini diets where I had like little rebounds in there. If I get someone like and I get them peeled for a show and they're just someone that's like um they just need to be bigger. Like they have tons of room to be bigger, like they need to make a big leap. I am probably shooting high in terms of like the surplus and maybe even body fat wise where I might let them go for the first 8 weeks. Um, because I want to get as much out of it as I can. I'm not going to have them eat a cheat meal every day to where they're just a sloppy mess and nothing was productive. But like I'm gonna push food high, and if at the 8 or 10 week mark, when we start to cruise, it also just coincides with like a little diet to set up another off season. I'm okay with doing that. Whereas like someone that's more established, um, I think it's probably better to like you said, like someone that has years and years of force feeding, that's not the approach for them. Like you want to string the hunger out as long as you can. They probably already have a good chunk of size, so it doesn't take throwing all the fuel on the fire right away. And then, that means they're an established competitor. you're going to set them up to be leaner in the off season and the prep to be better the following year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's all situational. Your skin in the game is going to kind of determine the path
Yeah.
you get led on. You know, a first year competitor versus a 9-year guy, it's just a different setup. But you know, a middleweight versus a super heavy or a heavyweight is a different setup.
Yeah.
You know, females, different setups. Classic guys who might have weight cap restrictions, like all different, you know, considerations to make. So it's just, this is where having a coach that can just put the plan in place for you to just steer the ship and not have to worry about guiding it is so invaluable. Like everything that I was able to accomplish with my rebound didn't come from my own brain. Dom laid it out and I just executed. And I just don't, this self-coaching thing is ruining a lot more people's bodybuilding than it isn't. I'll be the first to say it. Like there's probably 5 people that can self-coach in the industry right now successfully. Maybe more. I don't know who all self-coaches and who doesn't, but you know, if you're not showing up skinned out at the shows and you're not having productive off seasons, you're not that good at it. So check your ego and hire a coach, or just admit that you're not that good at it, but you still want to keep trying to learn it. Because I laugh every time I see some sort of justification post about some reason why someone isn't where they want to be or this or that. It's like, yeah, it's because you're trying to get to the destination you're going by driving in circles instead of letting someone put you on a straight line.
Yeah.
You know, that's my rant on that. But we talk of like the biggest thing with the rebound that I've seen with people is just the inability to display the same discipline that they had in prep. And it's like, my opinion on cheat meals is becoming very, very, not even strict, but just like, I'm just at a point where I don't need them. Like, will I take one if it's given to me? Maybe, but honestly, probably not. Unless I have an opportunity to have something really fucking good that's not going to disrupt my gut.
Yeah.
So you guys wasting calories on just trash food like In-N-Out and Five Guys and all that, like that stuff is not bodybuilding food. That does not help you get better. It's probably less carbs than you would have had in a real meal, honestly. All it is a bunch of fat, oil, and just not quality meat. Even you could make a better burger at home. You're just going for the experience or whatever, the dopamine of acquiring the bag. And you guys, that's not bodybuilding. That's not rebounding. You might look okay for a few weeks doing that, but you're going to look like dog shit eventually. And worse, your blood work's going to show it too. You know, clean food is what we talk about when we build a rebound out. Maybe you get a situation where you can have one free meal a week if it's something that warrants your situation. But if you're coming to me and you want to be a top bodybuilder, I'm going to tell you to not be a pussy and give up the free meals, because I can do it. I skipped all holiday meals. I was fixing my gut. I haven't had one since October, or maybe one, I think, in Europe, but it can be done. Like, and I eat as many like your goal should be to up your base calories. A free meal throughout the year, like if we're really talking about cheat meals, they're there for the psychological breaks. They serve no positive purpose for bodybuilding, in my opinion. They don't do anything that whole food, clean food won't do. It's just a psychological break if and when you need it. But if you truly want to stay on the path towards progress, just eat the foods that work, the foods that you dieted to get in shape on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easier said than done. I think there's a lot of people that hear that and they're going to struggle to do that, but it's just a matter of how much you want it. Like, especially if you're someone that comes off stage and you need to make a big leap, shoving tons of real food and like almost treating, especially if you could just do it the first 4 or 6 weeks, treating it like it was contest prep. And it's just like, man, like I was able to do this for 16 weeks because I knew in 16 weeks, this would bring me my best. I'm not able, like, you're telling me you can't do that for another 4 to 6 weeks. Because then that might set you up being your best, like better than you could have ever imagined a year from now.
It's not.
So it's just it's a great time to see like kind of where people are psychologically and where bodybuilding and progress kind of lands on their priority list. Like, you help someone that's kind of a contest prep only type bodybuilder. Maybe they have a family, they live it all year, they stay on a structure, whatever. Um, but like I can always tell, like if someone is having to like schedule a vacation, you know, to leave the Monday after the show, it's like, man, this is not the best timing. Like you could have scheduled this 8 weeks after the show and it's the same experience, except
Yeah.
you're going to be coming back from that vacation a much better bodybuilder if it would have been 8 weeks after the show instead of 1 week after the show.
Yeah.
If you're crushed and you're a family man and like you went through a terrible prep and like you love bodybuilding, but it's not like in terms of like getting huge and becoming a pro and all this stuff, that's not on the list. Great. Going on vacation 2 days after the show is probably awesome. But if you're serious about this, like I've clients in prep. I have a couple of first time guys in prep that are asking me rebound questions. You know, rebound questions, but they have a girlfriend and they have a vacation and all this stuff. It's like, man, like if you're asking my opinion on what's best, schedule the vacation for 8 weeks after the show. Because then you can do one shot of test and leave all your drugs at home and just go because you're going to be on a cruise anyway. And you're still going to look good if you took the 6 or 8 weeks seriously. You're going to look awesome. And it's just a way different experience. Like we said earlier, I do think there is more bang for your buck in the 6 to 8 weeks after your show. So those are for a different reason than the prep was. Those 6 to 8 weeks after a show should be treated as a priority if you take this serious, because it's just a huge chance. It for lack of a better term, and at the risk of sounding like super insanely bro, for all the reasons we just talked about, for 50 minutes, there is like an additional level of magic to those 6 to 8 weeks, more so than any other 6 to 8 week stretch 6 months into your off season. I firmly believe that. And we've seen it. So
Yeah.
it's not, I'm not just guessing. We've seen it over and over again.
Yeah. I think part of playing the long game too is just, we've told our stories. We went nuts when we were younger and doing our first shows. Absolutely. Not
Yeah.
for weeks, but I definitely acted like an asshole with food and I paid for it in how I
Yeah.
felt. And also
how you looked.
I didn't make the progress. I've
Right.
killed 2 rebounds that I can think of for sure. One was this past season, and it was pushing lots of clean food. It was training like I love to, and it was extending the prep with more PEDs. So and both of those rebounds were built on the fact that I was peeled, probably over dieted both times to a degree, and that set the runway for that progress. So if there's another reason you need to get skinned out for the stage, it's think about the leapfrog forward you're going to take if you nail everything after the show day. Because let's face it, guys, the show day is just a checkpoint in time. None of us included, or you listening, are probably at a place where you're like at your peak size or you have enough muscle. Like each show it's a checkpoint, it's an opportunity, it's a learning experience, it's spiritual, but it's just one day. Your journey, if it means something to you, still has to continue, and you have to think bigger than just that show day. And I watch so many people get to that show day, and it's almost like, when someone gets home from work and they're just like, that's almost what people are like the Sunday and Monday after the show. And I'm just like, man, take your time, stay down, focus on rest. You don't have to go kill it in the gym 5 days next week. But if that's where you're at, this actually might not be for you in terms of the long game. Now, if you're going to be one of these people that does a show a year as a way to get in shape and do it for fun, 100%. I love those people. I love working with them. But if you've uttered the words moving up to the national level or I want to be a pro, you can't be like that. You cannot.
It's just too important of a time period. It's too sensitive of a year. Like as those same people would look at you crazy and would understand how crazy it would sound to say like, hey, it's 6 weeks out from the show after you just put in all this work. Go on vacation, eat whatever you want. those people would be like, what? Like, no, I know that's a really sensitive time. I need to be on the ball. It's like, okay, so I can say the same thing about the 6 weeks after the show then too.
100%. Like I don't know, it's a 52-week year. And I think some people need to look at the year on like like one of those big calendars where each month is there versus 1 week at a time sometimes, so they can really see it. Like if you do plan to compete next year, like there's got to be a sense of it. For me, it was originally I was going to do nationals, and it's like I knew I was 68 something weeks out, and was like, it wasn't like, oh, I've got 68 weeks. It was like, I've only got 68 weeks. I need every one of them. So, but you have to appreciate the journey and the respect the national level and all that to really think like that. And you just have to be objective and not delusional about where you stand. And having a coach who's not afraid to tell you, like, hey, you didn't deserve to win. If you thought you should have won, I'm sorry, but you weren't the winner. They don't mess up local shows, guys. It's really not. It's not that it's not political. It's none of that. It's pretty evident. You just need to be better and bigger at the end of the day. So think about that when you're eating just straight garbage, or alcohol or partying, whatever the case is. Just think about that. You're not getting better in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to wrap it. I think that's all things post-show rebound for now. I mean, we could probably do like multiple episodes about it, but for now, I think that's a good updated episode on it. I'm sure it's come up many times over the past 2 years of us doing this show every week, but I think it's always good to kind of revisit some of these ideas because, like we've talked about, whether it's training, diet, drugs, how you approach a season, your thoughts should always be evolving. You're getting new information, and you should be updating your perspectives based on that. So for Tommy Styles, I'm Joseph Percher. This was a Thinking Man's podcast talking post-show rebounds, brought to you by Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel. And until next time, guys, we are out.